Alrighty, welcome back in, our hockey insider, golf guy, an all-around great person, familiar face around the world, James Duthie. JD, how's it going, man?
Good, boys. I just cut myself shaving too, so if I bleed openly on your podcast,
don't worry. I just
forgive
popped
me. All right, not
a
that you
little
can
bit
see.
ago, and I'm bleeding too.
Okay, how are things?
I only have about
What's
4
new?
hairs on my face. Not too much, man. Not too much. Just doing the return of. Does this air on tape? I'm just doing a Senators game tonight. I don't know if you want to make it feel like it's live or if it comes out a couple days later.
Yeah. I mean, we'll go next week, but that's all good though. That's all right.
Oh yeah. So, just heading in to do a Senators game, and no, life's fine.
Awesome. Okay, so I want to quickly chat about your summer, how much golf you got in, what were you doing? I know you like to put away the mic and get off of the TV for a little bit in the summertime. So, walk us through summer.
Well, first of all, I mean, I said this on my podcast last week. I got my first hole in one.
Right.
I got to Cabot with Bob McKenzie, and I got vengeance from losing that match last year, which I think we talked about last time I was on.
Yeah.
When Jeff O'Neill and I lost to Kyle Dubas and Jerry D. It was a rematch, not as hyped. Myself and Sean McKenzie from Sportsnet against Mark Scheifele, and it ended up being Brandon Tanev of the Kraken. We won on the last hole in dramatic fashion. And so, hole in one, match victory, Cabot. I really feel like I should have got consideration for player of the year, along with Cantley and Rom.
Okay, walk us through
Some
the
would
hole in
argue.
one then.
By the way, we're gonna. Oh my God, that was loud.
You're good. Go ahead. You're good.
How's your upper glute injury? You're playing that match injured, so.
Well, thank you, Turner. Yeah, it was. Look, the word hero gets thrown around too loosely these days. So what happened was I'm playing. I was up in Muskoka, which is just north of Toronto here, the week before, and sitting on your ass drinking beer for 2 weeks, and went to play golf, not stretching, not warming up, not doing anything. And actually, you know what I did? I was feeling so guilty about drinking all the beer that I did I went on YouTube and did a leg glute workout the day before, doing all this stuff I hadn't done in about a month. So I go out to the golf course with Pierre Lebrun and Gino Retta, David Amber. I guess my son was the other one. And just on a wedge shot on the 6th hole, I just felt this rip. And this is old man injuries. And I was in agony. So the match happened to be 5 days later, and I didn't do anything for those 5 days. And went to see a chiro and everything, and he just said, "Yeah, you tore your glute somewhere along the way." So I had so many. This is not a good advertisement for you youngsters watching. I had so many painkillers in my system, and I was swinging I had to hit 3 clubs extra on every shot that I would normally hit because I couldn't turn. Look, you've probably seen my swing. It's not the best anyway, but I couldn't turn at all. And it was funny because Scheifele and Tanev and Sean all just destroy the golf ball, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I hit it okay for an average guy, but not in those guys. They're all 320, off the tee kind of thing. And so there's a par 3 that was, I don't know, 155 downwind or something. And those guys had lob wedges in their hands. And I've got a 7 because I can't turn. And it was so embarrassing. But in some ways, you know how sometimes you slow down and smoother. And I ended up playing much better than I had last year. So maybe there was a blessing. But yeah, I won with a torn ass.
Well, as me and Turn like to say, you got right in the butter zone. We call it the butter zone when you're there. You just figure it out. Doesn't matter what club you're using. They don't ask how.
No, you're right. And it worked okay that day for some strange reason. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. Those guys it was supposed to be Tyler Sagan, and Tyler had to bow out. Tyler had to bow out at the last second. And I'd prepared all this, Tyler Sagan chirps. I had a whole thing full of them. And then Tanev showed up at the last second, but they were really good. Frankly, I said this on the broadcast. We got strokes. they're both 1 handicaps.
Wow.
Sean is probably maybe a 6.5, 7, maybe an 8. And I think I was like, my index at the time was 8. So I'm like a 10 or something. So we ended up getting 6 strokes. And the format they play is 6 holes of best ball. So you hit, for your listeners, you hit your ball and 1 score counts. 6 holes of alternate shot, which is always the most stressful. And then 6 holes of scramble. So we fell like 5 shots behind, but sort of back, like in the end of the alternate shot, we stopped, like we just couldn't miss for a couple holes and caught back up. And so you had two strokes in a scramble is kind of as you guys know, a benefit. Absolutely, when you have 2 decent players playing. So I said to Sean, if we could get to 18 even, we had a stroke on 18, we'd have a pretty good chance to win. And that's how we won with the net par. It's like winning with a bases loaded walk, right? But it was super fun. Those guys were awesome guys.
Okay, James, I want to quickly chat here about the 2021 Masters. You know, Hideki wins, Will Zalatoris is right there. You covered it. You covered it with Graham and Bob Weeks. Maybe touch on the transition for, Graham Dillette, on the air with you guys. How's that been?
Yeah, it was the saddest Masters for me because you guys probably noticed I was in studio for the first time in 8 years.
Yeah.
Because trade deadline came on the Monday after the Masters. So, trade deadline for whatever reason is a big deal at TSN. So we just were worried that I couldn't get back in time if there was a Monday playoff or something. So I had to stay back at home, which kind of sucked, but still tons of fun to watch. And it was a little, I like Masters that are dramatic, and that's 2 in a row now that Dustin Johnson completely sucked the drama out of the last one. Yeah. And then Hideki kind of did the same down the stretch because he was so great. It was, to me, I was nice to see Hideki win. But it was, we need a Masters. We need another one of those. I mean, we were spoiled in 2019 with Tiger. Absolutely. We need another one of those ones with 4 guys in it, down to 16, 17, 18, which we haven't had in a few years. And so I'm hoping we'll get that this April. But it was fine. And as for Dillette, I love the guy to death. He's awesome. And I think he's getting better sort of every time. And this is, I guess, the second year that he's done it now, or he did the 2 in a row. So I think he's going to be awesome at it for a while.
Nice. Rip.
All right. So we're going to talk some hockey now. What are you liking so far throughout the season, and what are you disliking so far?
It's so early. And the one thing that I've always said is I try not to make any conclusions through at least double-digit games. Premature speculation or premature evaluation is a male problem that we all have, premature evaluation. So anybody in Buffalo that thinks they're suddenly the number 1 seed in the East as we record this, undefeated, and the Habs are winless as we record this, and I think it's so easy to panic early on, and all those things will end up evening out, I think. But individually, it's been fun watching McDavid and the Oilers. I think it's fun when the Oilers are good. So it would be great if they're, or have one of those years. It's not just McDavid, Draisaitl, but they're good. I think it's a lot more fun. Out East, I think there was in Toronto, there's just kind of the wait for Austin Matthews for the first few games there, but he looked awesome now in his return. So to me, I just, all I'm looking for early on in the season is to see if there's, some teams that suddenly might have clicked, right? That have been decent teams, and maybe they've made those couple off-season acquisitions, and suddenly it's all coming together. Again, as we record this, Florida looks really good. Yeah, like that Spencer Knight looks ridiculous. It's going to be crazy if he plays, most of the year, and Bobrovsky sit there with $10 million doesn't play. Yeah, so that's an interesting story, I find. Minnesota suddenly looks like they might have something going. So I think it's those stories like that to see if there's to see if there's meat on the bone, right? To see if those teams are going to end up being legit, or Anaheim looking decent off the start. Can, when nobody picked them this year, can they actually end up contending for a playoff spot? So those are the things I look at early on in the individual stories to see if somebody's going to, we're going to be watching Ovi until he retires, until he breaks the record, right? So
yeah.
Yeah.
What did you watch the All or Nothing, the Leafs?
I did.
Thoughts on it?
So I had heard that the original cuts were much more interesting.
All right.
Because they, like, those cameras they had installed in Dubas's office and such were there. Like, they were just little cameras that were there all the time. So like anything else, I'm sure they forget about them.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there was a lot of intriguing trade talk and player evaluation talk that ended up on the cutting room floor just because the Leafs said we can't put that in.
Yeah.
But it was still I love anything that goes behind the curtain. I think is cool. So it was neat to see that stuff, and I wish we could see more of that. Stuff from the office, a coach putting a guy on waivers, or a GM putting a guy on waivers, coaches on the ice talking to guys during practice. I like that a lot, and I wish we could see more of it. I got the feeling, the Leafs agreed to it, and it was probably going to be a 10-part series because they thought they were going to go on a deep run, because it kind of ended abruptly. Yeah. Oh, and now we're out 6 parts. So that part of it was, and I'm not a Leafs fan, but if you were a Leafs fan watching that, I think it'd be hard to watch in a way because the ending, and the ending sucks, right? So all you're really watching is the behind the scenes stuff. But it was neat. And like I said, I wish more teams would air that kind of stuff, because I don't think people can get enough of the real behind the curtain stuff.
It's kind of just too bad. I mean, like, obviously the title's All or Nothing, and then they just
they just could have called it nothing.
Yeah.
So that, they lose, but then like what if you do all? I think the team should do it from the start to finish the full season, right? And they did that. But like, what happens if your team's unreal? Like, let's just say Tampa goes all the way and they miss playoffs. Like, do you just bank all that film, or how do you put it out? I find it like what you're saying, right? Like, if you're a fan, I wouldn't want to watch that. I mean, you already know the answer.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Look, it's pretty expensive to do, right? You have to have crews hanging around all the time. And, for the most part, teams will do it. We see teams doing it more and more often, and they'll release stuff on social media of, someone giving away the game puck in the dressing room, which, again, I think is great. And you get some good moments in there, but we know it's always sanitized for the most part, right? Teams aren't going to release anything where the captain's yelling at the goalie for letting in a softie. Yeah. So that's the only drag. I think that the only part that could make it, I'm just talking strictly from a TV perspective now, you'd have to mount cameras. Like, you could mount 10 cameras, 4 different ones in the dressing room, 2 or 3 in the training room, GM's office, coach's office. You could just mount those and roll them all year. You wouldn't get everything. You'd get kind of a CCTV kind of look of things, but you probably could capture some cool stuff.
Absolutely.
All right. We're going to stick with the hockey here. Any young stud that people might not know of or kind of overlooked, do you think there's any guys that have caught your eye and they think they're going to make a big bang this year or upcoming years?
Wow, that's a great question. And you put me on the spot because I'll miss somebody for sure that I shouldn't be missing. Well, let me just do it because I've done a bunch of their games this year in the Ottawa Senators. And Shane Pinto, who's playing their second center right now, I think is somebody that, again, nationally, nobody's really talked about, who just looks really, really good. Now, is he going to be a first-line center in the National Hockey League? Maybe. He's not going to be a first-line center that's going to score 100 points or 120 points or something, but man, he plays the game so well for a rookie. We got a taste of him at the end of last season. I'm just amazed at how complete a player he is a handful of games into his National Hockey League career. So again, I'm not saying you should grab him right away in your fantasy league, but just a young guy who's impressed me a ton so far.
And disappointing guys thus far. Anyone that's not fulfilling up.
By the time you guys air this, the guy who I will name as disappointing will have had 8 points in his last 3 games.
First start of the week.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a tough one. Look, I'll stick with the Canadian teams. It's a big season for John Tavares and Mitch Marner. The toughest thing with the Leafs, I think, is no matter what they do, it doesn't matter, right? Because of what we just talked about. The regular season's so irrelevant. So how do you get up for 82 games knowing you have to make the playoffs when nothing you do will matter? Like Mitch Marner could have 130 points and none of it will matter until the playoffs.
Yeah.
And so that's fascinating in itself. But I haven't been wowed by either one of those two guys when there's a lot of heat on them this year. But again, just a handful of games in, and I could be proven wrong by the time you guys air this thing.
You know what? And it's one of the best quotes I think I've ever heard, and it's Billy Beane from Moneyball. If you don't win the last game of the season, nobody gives a shit. So you're right. You can go 82-0 and then you lose the first 4 straight.
It's so true. Like failure, the definition of failure in professional sport, the major professional sports, is so crazy because of that. Like you can't, Brian Burke always said there's only one parade, but it's so true. Like you go to the Stanley Cup final, like the Habs did, you're better than 30, now 31, but 30 last year, other teams. And you're, I guess that's a bad example because that season's considered a success, but it sucks like crazy to lose in the Stanley Cup final. And I guess the one thing about the individual sports, like the individual sports like golf and tennis or whatever are they're really hard, but there's more notoriety or more credit given to your accomplishments, right? Golf. Okay. So Ricky's got 4 top 10s in his last 7 starts. Nobody says that about, the Oilers, right?
Yeah.
So there's one thing about individual sport where you get a little more credit for failure. Yes, wins are all that matters, but for a lot of guys, top 10s, top 5s, top 25s, making cuts, those things do mean something. So it would be tough to have every season defined as a failure because you lose your last game when it wasn't really.
True. Okay, one more here, James, and then we'll go to our questions from the gallery because we know you got to jump off here and go call a hockey game. You're not a big projection guy, but we're going to ask anyways. So early season projections to win the cup. Give us 3 teams.
I took Colorado. I'm not pretty boring selection. I took Colorado over the Islanders or Tampa. I can't remember. I did the show a couple of weeks ago. I think I picked Tampa. Although I think, Tampa, something's got to go wrong. You can't, it's so hard to win in this league.
Yeah.
I just feel like as great as they are, somewhere along the way, they're going to get a bad bounce or a key injury at a bad time. And something's going to happen. Colorado's not, as we talked, off to the greatest start, but I just think there's too much talent there. And this is the year they finally pull it together, even though they haven't really made it out of the first round much in the last few years.
Yeah. Fair enough. Alrighty, off to our segment called Questions from the Gallery, sponsored by Molson Coors. Meet New Vizzy Hard Seltzer with 100 calories per 355 milliliters. This variety pack is something for everyone to enjoy, including pineapple mango, blueberry pomegranate, strawberry kiwi, and black cherry lime flavors. Rip, how good are these things?
Unreal.
Yeah, so make sure you buy them today, always, and drive and drink responsibly.
Look at you guys with all your sponsors off the Hosel. It's very impressive.
Well, you can relate to one of ours, TaylorMade Golf.
Yeah.
Damn straight. They're the best.
They are.
They're the best.
I got 3 here. Rip might have 1 or 2, and then we'll let you go. They're just rapid fire ones. But how many?
Hold on 1 second. I'm gonna give a quick shout out to TaylorMade while we're here. So this is gonna sound like a commercial, and it's not. But I play with regularly at my club. He's 5 years older than me. He's a good player, but he does not hit the ball far. And he had PXGs. Okay. He went down to Arizona and spent like 15 grand on a set of PXGs. They don't sponsor your podcast, right?
No.
And, nice irons and everything. But he was like 60 to 80 yards behind me on the driver all the time. And I was kind of strutting down the fairway, right? Like I'm so much stronger than this dude. So he just got fitted and ended up with the Sim 2 driver and the TaylorMades. And he had his first round with the driver yesterday, as a matter of fact. And like he was even with me or passed me on a couple. And it broke my heart because I always thought I was just, worked out harder than him. And it was clearly just the equipment because I have the Sim 2 as well.
Yeah.
So 100% just the equipment. He literally went up like 50 yards from changing to that PXG driver to the TaylorMade driver. So the Sim 2 to me is the single best driver ever made. And I'm my cap's down like about 3 this year. I think I started the year like a 10.8 or something, and I'm like 8.1 now. And I attribute most of that to the Sim 2. So there you go. Free commercial.
Thanks, JD. Well, as
All right.
Aaron and I always say, these things are cheat codes. So yeah.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah,
they are. Okay, fire away.
Okay. How many rounds this year and lowest round?
I think on the app the other day, I think I'm about like 70 rounds.
Wow.
And I haven't had like a 77. I've had like 20, maybe 15 rounds in the 70s, which is the most I've ever had. But it's all been like 77, 78, 79. I was even on 14T the other day and popped like a 78, which was really disappointing. I tend to put up a couple of big numbers during a round. That's my trademark.
Yeah, it's the tough part. All right. What is the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to you while interviewing someone?
The most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to me while interviewing someone. That's a good one.
She's like shaving and then bleeding on the Off the Hosel podcast.
I mean, there's probably a million things on trade deadline. I have guaranteed that I have forgotten either who I was talking to or where they were traded to before on trade deadline. And so this may not be like a true answer to your question where the public would see it and go, oh my gosh, this guy's an idiot. But there are times I'm like, oh God, who is this? And where did he just get traded to? Because the day's so long, right? And I do about 50 interviews during the day. So then I'll do something like, so what's your reaction to going to your new team?
Professional.
So I've had a few of those for sure that have gone awry. I can't think of, one completely, horrible, awkward or red face moment. There was one, I'm not going to say who the person is because I respect them far too much in the business, but I was hosting a banquet once, which was a big banquet. Everybody in hockey was there, Hall of Famers and most of the GMs and executives from the league. I think it was a celebration of Hockey Canada and something with the Hall of Fame. And the person was supposed to interview Yari Curry. And they went up to Yari Curry's table. And I guess, Yari Curry's aged a little bit, but Bernie Perron got up. And so I guess this person wasn't 100% familiar with old players. And so the person says, are you ready for the interview? And Bernie Perron says, yep. And so I'm up on stage hosting and then go, all right, let's send it down to Yari Curry. And it's Bernie Perron. And the person goes, so Yari, what was it like playing with Gretzky for all those years? And Bernie Perron answers the question. But like I don't know if he was just like joking. Like, I don't know why Yari Curry was sitting right at the table. And Bernie Perron was like, yeah, Gretz was a great player. He challenged me a lot. And it went on. And it was only about a minute it went on, and then the person realized it wasn't Yari Curry, but it was the most excruciating minute of my life. And like I said, I love this person to death, and they're very good at what they do. It was just they didn't know what Yari Curry looked like aged, I guess, and didn't know what Bernie Perron looked like aged, and that was a tough one. So that was probably the most embarrassed I ever was, and it wasn't even me.
That's unbelievable. Well, good for that guy just to ride with it. I love it.
Just rode the wave.
Post coverage or post on the air beverage and after round beverage.
After round beer, whatever's there. I'm not a great distinguished beer guy, so I'll have just like Mill Street Organic or whatever there. I'll have. I like Mick Ultra, even though a lot of beer guys don't even consider it a beer, but I like the low carb thing.
Yeah, no free ads.
Yeah. So that's post round for sure. What was the other one? Post show?
Yeah, like maybe a trade deadline. But you must be just gassed though.
Yeah, this is gonna sound wussy too, but I'm a big coconut water guy when I'm out of done with thing, and I will I'm not the type of guy that'll pour like a rum and coke when I get home off a day like that.
Margarita?
Yeah, no, Bobby Margarita. I will not. So yeah, I'm pretty lame. But you know what? I'd have a glass of red wine probably when I got home from trade deadline with my wife.
Awesome. I love it. Rip, any more?
No, I'm good.
James, man, I appreciate coming on a short notice here.
Oh no, boys, you gave me lots of notice. I'm really sorry. I had a crazy last day or so, and I'm sorry I had to cut it short. But I do have to get on TSN so they don't fire me. So thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure talking to you, boys.
You bet. Take care, James.
Thanks, James.
All the best, man.
You too.